feather, light, work, asking, answer, accepting, honoring, all we are, earth to star. We're here at a sacred spot in Austin called Twin Falls, and it's not entirely bone dry, but a couple weeks ago it was really flowing, and there's so much water that you could get a back massage over here with the water pressure coming down on you in such a steady stream. And there's a place over here where people can jump and dive and, swim, a beautiful pool here. So this feels like a relevant spot to bring to conversation this subject of flow, the creative flow, the divine flow, the prosperity flow,
the love flow.
Yeah, the flow of energy that comes in our direction unless we stand in the way of it, unless we block it with our willpower. And there are a lot of ways we can block it. A lot of ways we can block financial freedom. Lots of ways we can block creative output. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to mostly talk about this really wonderful flow that we access when our hearts are open, when our minds are open, when we're making strong choices that honors the flow that's always coming in our direction.
Yeah, you make some really great points there. People often talk about creating prosperity. We're going to create prosperity. And I'd like to bring it in as an offering, as a potential shift in consciousness. As far as I see it, it's an up-leveling in understanding that we don't have to create everything, as Cabe is stating. It's already there. The first step to embody our wealth is realizing how wealthy we already are. I've been self-employed for 17 years, and my first huge teacher of this way was Abraham Hicks. Jerry and Esther, who channel Abraham, and their prosperity content is titled The Art of Allowing. The art of allowing what's already there. And this was some content. If you haven't received this information, if you haven't embodied these downloads, I highly recommend The Art of Allowing. And a tangible step for this I offer you is to listen to this while you're just being, while you're driving, while you're cleaning, just having it on, any of their work, but specifically if we're working in this realm, the art of allowing. It's so much higher frequency and higher consciousness than most music that's available to us, and really can assist in a good way on a subconscious and conscious level. But just allowing it to come in. And today's actually a really perfect day, divinely aligned for this this episode, this offering, this gift to ourselves by being here, and this gift to us as a community. The energy is in such a way, per observation of the Schumann resonance, amongst other collections of information, that there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity to shift to a higher timeline today. That there's a ton of energy to bring us up to our highest timeline. And I'd like to, before the end of our time together today, we'll maybe embody that option if you'd like to move forward in that way, in that new way.
Beautiful. Yeah, I've been admiring this bird song with us, by the way, and I finally identified the bird. It was a cardinal.
Wow.
And, cardinal around here, we have all this lush greenery, right? But then a stark red cardinal reminds me to show my true colors. And, we had the inspiration to call this episode Be True to You. And that's exactly the point that I want to make, is that the cardinal represents showing up exactly as we are, bringing our bright, brilliant color into this world that's another way. The world around us is almost wants to camouflage us. There was a time in my life when I was literally dressing in clothes that kind of dimmed down my qualities. My intention with wearing the grays and the black and dark blue was to blend in with my surroundings. And, it feels really good to stand out. The way of an artist is to stand out. The way of an artist is not to, find a way to blend in and adapt to the entire world and all the artistry around us, but to stand out, to say something, to be so bold, to wear a bright color, bring our bright colors, bright new ideas into the world. That's
inspiration.
Yeah, and that's, I'm finding a flow that way. I'm finding access to a flow that way by, being so bold as to grow my hair long and, just be.
Let it be.
Let it be, yeah.
Allow.
Let it be, yeah. When we say let it be, the word amen means let it be, Yeah, let it be. It's also like, so it is. I just look like me because this is the most natural version of myself. When I was in college, everyone had the same haircut. It's funny. It's like cookie cutter people. And, to be comfortable being myself, sporting a beard sometimes, grants me access to a deeper knowing of myself, deeper truth of who I am. And with being true to who I am, honoring all I am, I find that the way wants to bless me up in that. There are a lot of gifts that come with embracing myself.
Exactly. What a divine connection, because where I'm drawn to go to is, we started this conversation around flow. And flow, we think about love and prosperity and, even I would even stretch it into financial security, to being held not only with all of our needs met in the physical, but in the financial and emotional realms as well. And Cabe makes some really beautiful points about how he chooses to exist and be. And what it really leads in is to, how does this support that flow? And so what are the connecting points? What is the bridging that happens to get us back home to that flow? And the reality is this is just divinely channeled, what we're speaking to you, because what happens is when we get into alignment with our highest form of self, our being, who we ultimately are, our authentic representation of all of our parts, we get into alignment with our purpose, the way we exist. And when we are in alignment with our purpose, it's like we're seeking, we go through the stage of seeking who we are and seeking what our purpose really is. And the trick is just following our heart. What lights us up? What makes us feel good? And from Cabe's perspective, he's talking about the way he's representing himself, the way he's showing up in this world and just being what really is in alignment for him. And when we can do that, when we can get to that point, it's almost like Lego pieces. We get into alignment with our purpose, our highest self, and then we unlock this ability to allow everything that we be and more of ourselves to come in and embody that. And that consists of our love in the highest form. That consists of our prosperity and our financials. So when we're working and living and being and breathing our purpose and we're in alignment, this is usually when the magic happens. And I can speak from my own experience and from some of the clients I've assisted. When we get to that point, this is when the universe supports us. This is when the money comes in. This is when the artist is seen and paid for their art. This is when, the clairvoyant is in alignment with source without ego, assisting and being of service. And that's when the book gets filled and the clients show up on their own. We vibrate what we be. And by vibrating what we be authentically, we start to activate all of the contracts with all the souls and all the beings that we've agreed to come into alignment and support, whether it be inspiration from art or guidance in session, or whether it be even something as earth in 3D as an attorney who their purpose is justice and to help folks align with justice and getting, their needs met in that way. And then they align with their clients.
Yeah, that's how I'm finding my flow. I'm finding my flow by pursuing the path of what lights me up. And on that path, every single step is a joy. There's zero destination getting in my way. Every single step on my path of purpose is meaningful to me. And it brings me joy, it brings me abundance, it brings me connection. Now that I'm reaching this point of flow, and with flow comes a grace, with flow comes an ease. Before I reached this path of fluidity, I encountered all kinds of blocks.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about some of those blocks because, uprooting those blocks, clearing those blocks out of the way, clearing those obstacles out of the way will reveal the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
And, pursuing the path of least resistance is exactly the route to that flow state in my experience. So some of those obstacles are these: people-pleasing, self-doubt, fear of failure. A lot of these are destinations. These are future frames. These are future thoughts that are standing in my way. Worries, clouding my present moment with this thing that doesn't even exist. A fear of what someone's going to think about me saying something triggering. A fear of, my family losing interest in me. In the big picture, the worst that can happen is alienation, abandonment of family. But I find that when I'm fearing the abandonment of other people, I'm really creating a self-abandonment because I'm dishonoring my truth. I'm adapting my truth. I'm adjusting my truth to fit the needs of the perceived needs of my society. But the truth will set me free. The truth will set us free. Each of us honoring our own truth creates a new version of freedom for every single one of us.
Yeah, and I feel like we can examine this. Like ultimately, the first relationship we have is relationship with self. That's the primary relationship in our existence. So all of the other relationships that manifest in our reality are access points for us to see these parts of ourselves. It's almost like we're interacting with the energy that we're supposed to be learning from. So in these moments where we can have this awareness, where we're identifying this fear of abandonment or fear of rejection or fear of whatever it is that we're identifying, when we see that, we can see that. It's easier for us to see that in our relations, in our family, in our partners, in our friends, in our communities. But when we come to that awareness, we can take a beat, we can take a stop, we can ground ourselves, and we can say, how does that apply to myself? Where am I abandoning myself? Where am I having fear in relation to self? So it's a way to kind of move through that and unpack that on a deeper level, because oftentimes we find these things. First step is like finding this and having the awareness to figure out what we're actually experiencing and what we're actually fearful of. Because sometimes in the beginning, we just feel the fear. And then it takes us, that work, we're doing the work, we're taking the initiative to jump in and figure out or identify what it is we're fearful of. And then when we can see that almost like projected into the other, into the community, into the partnerships, then we can take the next step deeper into our own awareness and we can turn it around on ourselves. And how do we experience that within myself? They're like little crumbs that lead us on a bread trail back to ourselves.
Yeah, speaking of those crumbs, those breadcrumbs, one of those things that lights me up is splashing paint. I have an entire area of my house dedicated to paint thrashing. What's more fun than splashing some paint? I imagine myself in heaven sometimes as this great big open canvas, and my first move is going to be splash some paint when I get there. A splash of paint might be a musical expression, a whistle. For some of us, that splash of paint might be getting our feet into some water. For some of us, that splash of paint might be planting a tree. There are a lot of ways to pursue what lights us up, and asking ourselves what lights us up reveals a stepping stone. And in this way, we keep the joy in the journey.
It's really helpful to identify that when we anchor into what feels good emotionally, physically, mentally, when we're on that path, when we're on that trail and we're following what feels good, this is really what we can kind of use this as a tool to really figure out what it is that we want to do. There's so many options. There's so much coming in. And so by working in this way, by feeling into what we're experiencing, by following the path of joy, following what lights us up, it may not be a real direct patterning to love and abundance and all those things, but it keeps us in alignment so that we're participating in activities that elevate us in a way to bring us to these.
It's natural that we keep on arriving at this idea of a destination, this big goal, the grandiose picture of it. But what if we just suspended that and allowed that future frame to be what it is and just focused on the present moment, just focus on the step right that we're on right now, letting that light us up, letting that nourish us, letting that treat us to a treat, give ourselves a treat of this present moment. And then we jump to this present moment and this present moment, and we continue to be present with our thoughts, present with our ideas, present with our energy.
Absolutely. And that's really the trick right there. That's really the key that unlocks the path of least resistance, by being in the path of least resistance. And so if we can be in that present moment and we can identify and make choices that lead us to what lights us up the most, keeping us in alignment with our highest and best, keeping us in our alignment with our purpose. And by being present in all of that, we have all of our energy anchored into this one place. And we're just this open channel of expression and love and joy. And so when we vibrate at that, it calls more of that in. So we're just creating from that moment. And by being present, we're creating from that moment. If we take a look at the opposite of that, if we take a look at if we're not present, we're creating from not the full amount of energy. We're creating from whatever feelings we may be perceiving at that time that have nothing to do with where we're at. So we're creating from a lesser intensity that's kind of like, and it could be creating whatever we're focusing on. If we're focusing on the past, we often find that it could be trauma or, things that are not grounded, things that are not serving, that are not lighting us up. If we're focusing on the future, it hasn't quite happened yet. So although there's some really yummy exercises about planting and creating in the future, we're trying to grasp on something that hasn't occurred. So that could be anxiety or the unknowing. So if we're creating from that present moment, it's the richest, most potent form of love and joy. And if we can be in that love and joy in that moment and follow those activities that light us up in that way, you win from all areas. You win from a creating, you win from a being, you win from the experience that you're in that moment.
Yeah, it's true. The anxious energy, the worrisome energy, the fearful energy, it's its own kind of energy. Yeah. And we see on social media how that affects us. It bombards us with this sticky, yucky, overwhelming blah. And the contrast is this pure love expression. That could be what we're sharing. There's no fear propelling that. There's no worry propelling that. There's just pure love and grace. And you can feel the different vibration when it strikes us, and of course we gravitate toward that.
So I'm being called to speak on something in regards to what if we're having a challenge in that? What if we're being as present as we possibly can? We're not feeling the love. We're not feeling joy. We're exercising our presence and bringing our thoughts, our attention, our energy to our present moment, and it's not feeling good, and we're not really sure how to navigate that. What I usually do, and hopefully it serves you too, is going back to a place of gratitude. You can always stimulate some sort of gratitude if you focus on even the basic of life functions. For example, the breath that we're breathing. For example, our bodies. For example, the food that we're eating. At the very least, we can get back to a place of gratitude by focusing on being grateful for being able to breathe and being able to be alive. And those are just some really simple, basic functions, but it cuts all the other stuff off and will help you generate those higher frequencies when you're navigating a tough situation.
And there's also the possibility of being ultra real and vulnerable and true to the sadness that we might be feeling, true to the overwhelm, but just be in the truth of where we are, even in a struggle state. We got to feel it to heal it. There's a lot of benefits in just being in the sorrow, being in the grief, being in the sadness and the scared energy too. Because honoring the present moment in whatever way it's showing up, that's where the flow happens. That's where the healing happens.
Yeah.
It's just in pretending like what's happening doesn't exist, or numbing out to it, being dumb to it, being dim to what's real. That's what creates all the distortion in our field.
But you don't want to get stuck in a loop either. So it's being in that place and healing and navigating that and allowing that to be real for you. But, if you're moving through that in a way and you'd like to try something different, allowing yourself to go back to that gratitude can be a way of breaking a loop. But I totally agree with what Cabe's saying by being real and honest. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to feel our emotions. Growing up as kids, especially kids in the 80s, it was always, we didn't really have that luxury. I don't think that there was a level of consciousness and awareness that gave us a safe haven to really express and feel in that way. And so now we're having to relearn that as adults, and hopefully teaching our kids that it is safe and appropriate to have the full wide spectrum of emotions. So there's value in having both tools and having the awareness that it's appropriate to feel and heal and be exactly where we are, raw and authentic. And then if we feel like we want to shift out of that, if we feel like we want to change for whatever reason, we have options to do that too.
Yeah, so next we'd like to paint the picture on some of these blocks that stand in our way, some of these instances where we're not being true to who we are. And again, we're talking about people-pleasing, self-doubt, fear of failure, and other blocks that might stand in our way. Let's dig deeper into these. People-pleasing. For me, this trap looks like restricting my voice, neglecting to speak truth or feel what I need to feel because I'm afraid of what other people are going to think. And this has been a major trap for me. I have limited myself in so many ways. If there's any constriction that I felt in my entire body, it's my throat. I learned at a young age to be cautious about what I say, especially if it's going to oppose anyone's viewpoint. It's something that parents teach their kids to adopt the ways of the culture, and sometimes the culture is just wrong. I remember one time, for example, I had a teacher who had appendicitis. He missed a couple days of school, and he said, anytime an appendix ruptures, a person dies. But that wasn't true for me. I actually had appendicitis when I was 3 years old, and my appendix ruptured. And I did almost die, but I lived. So I knew that to not be true, but he really put me in my place and told me I was wrong and kind of humiliated me in front of the class one time. And I can think of a lot of examples of that, and I don't want to dwell on the injustice of being a kid and being told to shut up. It's a hard thing to learn to have a voice and have an individual truth when much of the authoritative voices around us are hushing us and asking us to be quiet and keep our thoughts to ourselves. And I know Audrey can really relate with that subject. She had some radical thoughts as a youth. She can talk on that. But, people-pleasing takes a lot of different forms. For me, there's an obvious example in my life of a time when I was afraid of what people thought. It restricted my freedom to be who I am. I published this book called Wild, W-Y-L-D. It's a story about youths growing up in the Wyoming wilderness. And I love this story. It's so fun. It's so full of life. I used to wake up at 4:30 every morning and right before I went to work, and it was like a spirit journey for myself. I was immersing myself in the Wyoming wilderness. I was holding space for my inner child to heal. And, some radical healing took place in my life because I put myself in that position. And I wrote on that subject. And so I wrote this wonderful youth fiction novel series. When I first published the book, I changed the author name because I was afraid of what other people would think. I didn't stand behind this book in the authority of who I am, with the boldness, with the willingness to be seen with all these wild spiritual concepts that were different from the spirituality that was modeled for me in my younger days. And I was afraid of what those people from my church would think. And would they shame me for having these abstract notions of what spirituality meant to me? And would the Christians in my life be fearful for me because I'm connecting with nature. So anyway, I used an alternative author name for several years, for about 10 years, and I sat on it and nothing happened. It was silent. Nobody knew who this other author was. That person didn't have a following, you know? Nobody cared about this no-name person coming up with something to say. But now I honor who I am, and I celebrate these original thoughts, and I celebrate these stories that light me up, this path of light, where every step I took then and the steps I take now are a path of light and love. And so I celebrate this book. I celebrate this book series. It stretches me to new territory in my imagination, in my connection with my surroundings, most of all, my connection with self, my self-honoring. And I've learned to honor and accept all I am, one step at a time through this book series and through other steps. And this book helped make a way for me once I got out of my own way.
This is a really common occurrence, especially in the conscious awakening community, and being able to step into what we know to be true to us, and the experiences upon experiences that validate how we feel about reality, about our existence, about knowing about our spiritual gifts, about communication with the etheric, about knowing what's on the other side of the veil, and working and moving in this way. This is really, really common. And we work with many different folks who are navigating this, including ourselves who have done it at one time, being able to be proud and stand in our power about what we know to be true to us and what we know to be alive for us, and being able to overcome what other people are thinking. And as Cabe's expressing, this comes from all different systems of thought, all different belief systems that we've had previous encounters with that have told us this is the way, and that is the way, and this is the way. And so we really pride ourselves on creating a space where all the ways are the way, and that we allow, there's a space for that allowing, and there's an allowing for me to express in my authenticity and how I experience life, that I can commune with spirit, that I can commune with loved ones beyond the veil. It took me decades to be able to publicly speak in this way because of all the other ways and all the other belief systems and all the other ways of life that I was told was correct, or this is the only way. Speaking from this point, and in relation to people pleasing, it's an awareness. I'd like to bring this in for us in understanding that as we extinguish what we know to be true for ourselves, whatever that may be, even if it's something really big and shadowy that we're navigating that we just need to feel and heal through, it doesn't matter if it's factual or an experience or a feeling. What is true to us, by us extinguishing that, agreeing and aligning with someone else's thoughts, beliefs, systems, it is a natural effect to abandon ourselves in that way. So I just want to say that one more time. By extinguishing our own reality, not speaking, not acting, not moving in the ways we feel authentically called to moving in and being in, we are abandoning ourselves. It's an abandonment of self. So what we're actually doing, it's not so much about the people pleasing. We can navigate that on a couple of different levels and get that into alignment. But it's what we're doing, what's happening naturally by doing that. We're shutting ourselves down. We're shutting parts of ourselves down, big parts of ourselves down. We're shutting remembrances of our own authenticity, of our truth, of potentially lifetimes past, of our lineage, of ways we know that have served ourselves, our ancestors, our communities. So next time we move in that way, next time we feel called to mute, to dim, to numb, to dumb ourselves down, I ask you to just take a beat, especially if you feel an ultra intensity and a time sensitivity. There is a golden nugget there. If we can't make our decisions and our movements in a grounded space of flow, and we feel pressured by things like time, that's when it's an indication that there's something more to look at. If we need to immediately respond and agree with something, if there's this pushing desire to move in a way, there's something there for us to uncover, because we should be able to respond in a grounded, heart open space, in a calm, collective way. And if we're not able to do that, usually there's something else there at play. So by moving through that and just being able to identify where we're people pleasing, that's a big accomplishment all in itself. We may have to move through this in multiple layers. We may have to start with just, okay, I know that I'm people pleasing. I know that I'm muting myself. I know that I'm extinguishing my truth and I'm not sharing my authentic truth. Now, how do I move through that? And there may be a lot of resistance, a lot of fear. Oh my gosh, I'm not ready for that. That doesn't feel good to me yet. We may just start with an awareness of it. Where are we doing it? Okay, I have the need to people please. I have the need to align with this friend and support what I don't actually believe in. And we can start with this awareness and just bringing that in a little bit more. There might become a point where we're ready to speak on it. There might be a point where we feel strong enough to speak, in dissonance or disagreement from a place of love, So it's a starting point. Finding that starting point where we can start to bring our truth back in. And sometimes it may not be safe to do that immediately in an opposing environment, but maybe we start by expressing ourselves in a way that's unseen. Maybe we start by writing like Cabe did. That is such an amazing tool. He maybe was not ready to get on his socials and speak and scream from the mountaintops what he was really feeling and these remembrances that he was having and this understanding of reality in a new way. He maybe wasn't ready for that, but he was ready to start to bring it to the surface. So how can you bring it to the surface? Whether it's in your art expression, whether you're writing, maybe you're, speaking to one person and not the whole community. Finding that way of identifying moments where you're not being authentic, or where can we be authentic? And those are kind of two polarizing opposites, but we can dance in these areas and start to navigate our authentic reality.
That's a lot to take in. I want to go deeper too. I want to talk on self-doubt and fear of failure also.
Ask, answer, acceptance, honor. All we are, earth to stars.